Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The world of medicine, where every decision can change lives, your peace of mind is crucial. This is where Pattern steps in. Imagine insurance made simple, fast, and personalized just for you. With Pattern, you're not just getting disability and life insurance, you're ensuring your future and protecting your greatest asset, your income. In the past 10 years, Pattern has transformed the way over 20,000 doctors secure their financial well-being. Discover the simplicity of securing your future at patternlife.com or click the link in the description.
We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode, and I'm really delighted for today's guest. He is a real veteran and expert in the space, Dave Jackson, talking all about podcasting, and he's been in the podcasting space since 2005, and we'll hear about his journey. He's also worked at Libsyn, one of the top podcast hosting companies, and he's won so many awards, and I'm really happy to have him on the show to really enlighten the listeners about building, growing, starting, ways to use a podcast. And so Dave, welcome.
Oh, Christopher, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I know, so I just gave you but talk about your early days, what drew you to podcasting? I mean, you were so early. I thought I was early. I got in 2018, but you were like,
back before it was in Apple. It was really painful. I had my background is I was a teacher in the corporate world. So at the time I was teaching a lot of Microsoft Office and QuickBooks and time management and stuff like that. And one of the Microsoft products was Microsoft Front Page, which was this archaic way to make a website now, but that's what I was teaching. And so I'd built a website. One of my other hobbies is music. So I had made this website for musicians to help them learn how to get more gigs and sell more CDs and things like that. And so a friend of mine was really into marketing, and he'd come back from this huge marketing event. And again, kind of dating myself, he goes, "You know how you missed the MySpace boat?" And I'm like, yeah, don't rub it in. He's like, "I've seen the next big thing. It's podcasting." And I went to Google and I typed in podcasting, and there was 1.5 pages. And I go, "Wait, how do you spell this again?" POD, type of, there's 1.5, there was nothing on podcasting. So it took me a while to kind of, rubber band and paper clips one together. And I remember I uploaded a file, and then I saw it come down in the software, and I went, "Oh, I see what this is going to do." And so, but the first couple of years, it was brutal because I'd launched the School of Podcasting. And I would ask people, "Do you ever listen to podcasts?" And they're like, "Do you need an iPod for that?" And I'm like, "No, just the internet and some speakers." So once I finally explained to them what a podcast was, they then would go, "Yeah, I don't want to do that." So it was a lot of fun. But I remember when Apple added podcasting to what was then iTunes, and that's where you actually saw a hockey stick growth. It just really, really launched everything through the ceiling. And it's been fun along the way. I mean, the early days of podcasting, it was very much, we don't want to be radio, which is kind of weird because that's kind of where we are now. Sound like radio, but it was very much things that you could never do on the radio. And then most of them were tech shows because you had to be a nerd to figure out how to make one. And then there was English or just basically language podcasts. And then along came the comedians, so the Mark Marons and the Adam Carollas and that whole 9 yards. And then Serial hit, and that was the introduction of true crime, which is still basically the genre that will not go away. Everybody wants to know how to kill their spouse and not get caught, apparently. I don't know. But, and that's when I remember I was watching Saturday Night Live and they did a skit on Serial, and I went, wait, we're mainstream. Like, because occasionally you would hear a news show say, oh yeah, be sure to listen to our podcast, and we'd all get giddy. They said podcast on TV. And but when they did that on Saturday Night Live, I was like, wait, they wouldn't do that unless enough people knew that. And back then, millions of people had already been listening to Serial. So it's been a fun ride, and gear's gotten a lot smaller and a lot cheaper, and so it's been fun to watch.
Yeah. I was telling someone the other day that YouTube and podcasting is the modern day book tour. So
yeah, but that's where what I see people make a lot of mistakes on is, here's a less than $100 microphone. It's the Audio Technica ATR 2100, plugs directly into your computer, and yet I see authors show up on my show and they're trying to use the built-in microphone of their laptop, and I'm like, this isn't a Zoom call. This is a podcast, and you don't need to go spend thousands of dollars. But I'm not putting you sound like a fishbowl in a bathroom. I'm like, I'm not putting that on my show or spending hours to clean it up. And if you want to sell a couple books or something, again, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars, less than $100, and you'll sound amazing.
Yeah, I love that. We'll talk about like lighting and sound, because I love your background for those of you that are on YouTube or streaming or that are on the video podcast. I wanted to follow up because most people, they're like, most notably, they try to be like, when they on these platforms, they try to be like the big guy. Like for podcasts, it's Joe Rogan. For YouTube, it's Mr. Beast, and they're like, yeah, I can never reach that. But talk about why you can never be like them, and that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, the first thing, people think Joe Rogan started where he is. Like, he just walked into that room with him and Jamie and started a podcast. Like, nope. Joe Rogan was a stand-up comedian. It took him about, I think, 8 years to make his first album.
Yeah.
Then it was on something news show. It was like News Daily or something. It was a comedy show. He was on that. He was an actor. Then he did MMA. And then he started this podcast. And so if you want to be just like Joe Rogan, it takes about 10 years just to get the experience up of entertaining people.
Yeah.
And don't try. And I hear people say, oh, we just do it Rogan style. And that just means they do a podcast for 3 hours and then they don't edit. And I'm like, yeah, you can't do that because you're not Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And I always say a podcast is a conversation with the boring parts removed. I mean, and I see people, the other mistake I see people do is they'll do a podcast where their bestest buddy and they have 15 years of inside jokes. So all of a sudden it's, Jim and Marty says orange Gatorade, and Jim just spits out everything. Orange Gatorade, I can't believe it. And the audience is like, I don't get it, because they weren't with you for the orange Gatorade story. So they think they're hilarious because they're laughing, but they have that curse of knowledge that the audience doesn't know, the inside joke and things like that. Yeah, it's really when you're starting, what you have to figure out is, why am I doing this? And so if I'm a doctor or a lawyer, I want to explain and set myself up as an expert. So I might do like a 20-minute weekly show where I do a deep dive into one subject, and it's people go, I don't know what to talk about. I'm like, talk about the things that make your eye roll. Like mine is, what's the best microphone under $100? And I go, the Samson Q2U. I get that every single day. So that proves that people are looking for that. So make that your first episode. But if you want to use your podcast to help brand your show, then maybe you do a quick 5-minute tip 5 days a week. So at the end, you just repeat whatever it is your product is or your company, and you're going to keep that brand. When in the early days of podcasting, I don't remember the name of the show. I just remember at the end, they would say, this podcast is brought to you by the Association of Christian Athletes. And I heard it every day, 5 days a week. And so consequently, that's the only thing I remember about that show. So you have to kind of figure out, what's the purpose? Is this to position me as an expert? Am I trying to keep my brand in front of people? Or if it's just a hobby, is it I just want to talk about Batman in the basement? Well, that's fine too. That's another reason to do that. I had a guy once that contacted me, wanted to do a show about Batman, and he goes, yeah, I know. There are 800 shows about Batman. He goes, but my family is tired of hearing me talk about Batman, and I got to go find other people that want to talk about it. I'm like, there you go. It's another reason to do it. So you have to figure out why you're doing it. That also shape your content.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I really love how you inject humor. And one thing is that's really on my mind these days is because I just finished watching this talk from another podcaster and he basically he broke all the rules. He's like I'm not editing. I'm just gonna record it. I'm gonna show put my personality. I'm gonna put information. I'm gonna educate, entertain. And he's actually got tens of thousands of audience on YouTube. And so talk about making your podcast unique to your audience. It's whatever they want to hear. And but staying true to timeless principles like, having a microphone and lighting and all of that.
yeah, so that's really the second thing is you have to figure out who is my audience, because that's going to make it somewhat different. Because if I said I want to do a show about being more confident, that sounds like a great topic. Like, who doesn't want to be more confident? But what if I then it's pretty broad. But if I think about being a more confident first-time parent, well, not only did I niche down to parents, which cuts out everybody who doesn't have kids, but first-time parent, and people are like, yes, because I can't get this thing to stop crying. They're confused. But if I even went one step further and said how to be a more confident first-time parent and make it interracial, now we've got a whole different set of things to talk about. And you're going to have a smaller audience because not everybody's in that boat. But the people that are like, have you been reading my diary? I've been waiting for a show like that. And then so that's who. And then you got your why. And what I'm starting to hear, because everybody's so infatuated with artificial intelligence, right? AI, ChatGPT, and they're scraping themselves out of their podcast because there's no personal stories. It's just, this is what the robot said to say, so I'm going to say this. And I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm like, look, ChatGPT and AI is going to make a lot of all right content. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how do I lose weight? It's going to say, eat less and exercise more. Hey, thanks. Never would have thought of that. It's not really doing deep dives where you can share your own personal experience and your own personality. And so I heard somebody that had kind of ChatGPT write this script, and they were talking about failure and how it's not really a destination, right? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, this is where you share a story where you failed, what you learned from it, how you got back up and carried on. And he's like, yeah. And I go, what? And he's like, I used this and I ran it through Claude. Like, he ran it through 3 different AI tools, and it basically scrubbed himself out of his own show. And I was like, well, yes, it's easy. And yes, it spits out a bunch of words, but humans and Google don't just want words. They want good words.
Yeah.
And so that's where I just did a webinar. It's so funny because every time I say webinar, I feel like it's 1987. I did a stream. I did it live yesterday for Libsyn, and they kind of just let me be myself. There were no slides. It was just like, here's 10 questions that we got from Facebook and Reddit and a bunch of other groups, and they just let me go. And I got done. And of course, you always hate, the first thing you do is you hate what you just did. Like, oh, I was way too ADD for this or what. And they're like, man, we should do this every time. Just let your personality go. You're so Dave. And I try to make it fun along the way. If you can figure out who your audience is and what they want and what you want. And the hard part about podcasting is I have to be able to entertain the who while moving them towards my why. And where those overlap, that's the sweet spot. Because if I just talk about what they want to talk about, great, I'm going to talk about cat videos and French toast recipes. Okay, well, that's not going to put any money in my pocket if that's what I'm going for. And if I just talk about my products and services, that's called an infomercial. And nobody's setting anything to record, oh, the ShamWow commercial's coming on tonight at 10. I got to tape it. No, they're not doing that. So it's you have to kind of deliver value so that you're going to hold your audience, but at the same time, and that's where knowing your why comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah, we could. I think we'll have to have you on a part two, which I have like guests that have so much experience. But one thing I would really want to address is, significant shifts in technology, audience behavior, and what emerging trends or technologies do you think will significantly impact how podcasts are produced and consumed?
Yeah, the thing right now that everybody's getting all in a huff about is YouTube. And what happened, in my opinion, is YouTube and Facebook had a pretty big stranglehold on advertising. And then this little company came along called TikTok and took a big old bite out of their advertising revenue. And so the guys at YouTube are like, hey, like, we got to get people talking about YouTube. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I don't know. What do you got, Larry? And Larry's like, I don't know. Podcasting's hot. So they're like, great. Everything on YouTube is now a podcast. Like they literally just said, I dub thee a podcast. Like, wait, aren't you a YouTuber? No, you're a podcaster. So consequently, all these companies now that were getting ready to put money into podcasting have now put it into YouTubers who are calling themselves podcasters. And the biggest difference is, and why I'm kind of an OG guy, to me, look, if you want to do YouTube, I'm not anti-YouTube. Holy cow. Second biggest search engine. And if you've got the time and the budget and the actual, I want to be on video, then good God, go enjoy being a YouTuber. But the difference is audio will outperform video about 10-1. And the reason for that is because I can listen to your podcast in the car. I can't watch your video, and I can't do it while I'm watching the dishes or walking the dog. There's just more opportunities to listen to audio. And so I'm always like, let's start with audio and get you used to making content. And then down the road, maybe add video, because a lot of people really, they hate talking in public. So just getting that out there. And then when you throw in video, then they're like, now I got to shave before I get up or get on video. The other thing that I always like to point out is if I do a 30-minute podcast, I might have people hang out for 20, 25 minutes of that. Have fun trying to hold somebody's attention for 25 minutes on YouTube, because, and it's not, I totally poo-poo the idea that we have shorter attention spans. That, I think, in fact, people have delved into that, the whole goldfish thing. That's been debunked. What has happened is our people are more sharp at knowing when someone's going to waste their time. And so when I hear somebody start off a podcast with, hey guys, hey, I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but it's Thursday and I promised you a show, so here we go. And I'm like, yeah, and stop. That guy's going to waste 20 minutes of my time. So they both have their pros and cons. You know what I mean? There are people, like I had somebody join the School of Podcasting who found me on my YouTube channel. And she came over and said, oh, you do audio stuff too? And I was like, yeah, a little bit, 19 years, just a little bit. So there are people that just do YouTube and consume YouTube and they watch it in their living room and they're all about it. And again, if you got the time and the budget, be on YouTube. Holy cow. And then there are other people that just do podcasts. And so it's kind of fun, but it's the thing that makes me mad. My job as a teacher is YouTube has made it very confusing, because they're calling something that used to be called YouTube is now a podcast. So they'll be like, and they'll say things like, yes, more people are discovering video podcasts, which is YouTube, on YouTube. And I'm like, so you just said people are discovering YouTube on YouTube. I'm like, do you realize how stupid that is? And, Spotify has said, oh, you can do video podcast on our platform. Asterisks, the video only goes to Spotify. If you take the feed and put it into Apple, you're only going to get the audio. Like they will not send video every place else. So a Spotify video podcast only goes to Spotify. A YouTube, giant quotation marks here, video podcast only goes to YouTube and YouTube Music. And I don't know anybody that's listening to podcast on YouTube Music. And then you have what we used to call the original video podcast. And there are places like Podbean and Libsyn that you can upload a video, and it'll go to, I don't know, the 20 different apps that will actually display video. Not all of them do. I mean, Apple will show the video. Overcast won't show the video, but they'll play the audio. And so the reason YouTube is so popular is video files are huge. They're ginormous compared to audio. And that's why YouTube is so popular. So I just kind of look at it and go, YouTube, be YouTube. And you know, used to ask a 12-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'd be like a YouTuber. I'm like, yeah, go do that. And Spotify, you're amazing. I pay for Spotify. I love their music service. Just do music. Just stay in your lane, kids. You know, quit trying to be, because as a podcast coach, the one thing I tell everybody is don't try to be everything to everyone, because it just doesn't work. You know, figure out what your niche is and what you're good at, and do that. Because the minute you try to be everything to everyone, it's like you just water down everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think I've been watching Spotify really take hold of podcasting, and YouTube is a dominant platform, and but again, as a podcast, you have your own RSS feed, so you control it, and you can distribute it to the different platforms, but it's not like I said, it can't be like you can always put on others. So you have it's kind of I love that. How can people contact you and check out your business and website, reach out to you? You obviously have a lot of experience.
Yeah, my main, I guess, flagship show is schoolofpodcasting.com. That's my main one. I do have a number of different ones. They're all of shapes and sizes and things like that. And that is at powerofpodcasting.com. I've got a book about podcasting. I do consulting. Everything's over there at powerofpodcasting.com as well.
For all the audience out there, let's thank Dave for coming on, and I really loved his personality and his humor and his expertise. And be sure to give his socials a like and follow, and check out his work, and reach out to him. And thanks so much for coming on.
Doctors dedicate their lives to caring for others. It's time someone took care of you. Visit patternlife.com to simplify your path to peace of mind. Patternlife.com, simplifying your insurance journey.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislumdphd.com, for more support. I'll see you next week.